It was pointed out to me earlier that I have been scheduled alongside a gentleman in the main assembly room who has promised a communal singing of the Bruce Philosopher's song from Monty Python, and obviously this is a considerable draw. I must admit, I'd be there myself if I had to be. This talk is not really a talk of anything that I would advise you to do, and you're very unlikely to need to have to do it as well. It's more a public confession of sins and a little wind down for a Sunday afternoon where it's 5 o'clock, you've probably had enough, you can switch your brains off at this point and just listen to me burble for a while. Bit of background here. I've spent the last 13 years or so working on air traffic control systems for the Czech Republic for a small company called Like. There is a little bit of news in there first, in that actually I had a disagreement earlier this year, a rather profound disagreement with a fellow employee. Now, unfortunately, said fellow employee was the boss's daughter, the founder's daughter. So I'm now doing something else entirely, and I'll be talking a little bit about that in the lightning talk. But anyway, so this is my air traffic control swan song, and what I'm going to be introducing you to is an application called IDP. Now, IDP, you can't really see the details in this screenshot, and I apologise for that. This is an application that runs on big screens, on 2.5K by 1.5K, or 2K by 2K, or 2.5K by 2K screens. It's a surveillance application. It's a radar application. Have any of you ever flown to Prague? Yep. Or indeed over the top of the Czech Republic, because about half the air traffic controllers will be looking at this. Okay. And since you can't see too well, I'll give you a little close-up of some of it. The data, incidentally, don't ask me to explain it because it's test data. But the two main features that we have in the program are windows of flight stream related information, and then the main surveillance display with air routes marked on it, and individual tracks with an attached label. This is an expanded label. Typically you just have a little block with the left-hand side with the call sign, the heading, and the current speed in it, and so forth. This expanded one has the call sign as reported from the aircraft transponder, because aircraft transponders now transmit quite a lot of information. That's where the likes of Flight Radar 24 get most of their data from, their in-flight data. Anyway, that is the spoken call sign. So, for example, a British Airways flight will have a call sign to the air traffic controller of, say, Bravo Alpha Whiskey 457. But over the radio, you will call Speedbird 457 or 4507. Anyway, but yeah, so we're basically talking information related to a particular track. Now, IDP has been around for about 14 years now, and was written in this, meet the ODS toolbox. The ODS toolbox was developed by a German company in Bremen with funding from Eurocontrol. Eurocontrol is the governing body for European air traffic control. And it was developed in the very early 90s with the idea that it would be a standard toolkit for writing air traffic control applications. Now, what you were dealing with at this kind of period in time, indeed up until about 8 years ago, was these things. These are Sony DDM CRT monitors. as you can see, they're big beasts. They have a standard resolution of 2K by 2K, which for the early 90s was pretty damn big. So the monitors themselves are also pretty damn big. The recommendation is you should not try to lift them unless there's at least 3 of you. Okay. And to the intense distress of our techs who had to maintain them, the controllers overnight, when they got bored, were rather fond of playing games with magnets to drag the beams around the screen and completely throw the calibration of the monitors off. But anyway, these were also attached to, well, as you might expect, somewhat custom graphics cards with abysmal performance. And nothing like today's graphics capabilities. No transparency, no Z ordering. So the ODS toolbox actually has quite a lot of stuff in it to simulate transparency by mucking around with color lookup tables. And you only have 256 colors to play with in the first place. So once you add in that, you've got a grand total of maybe 16 colors you can use, all of which is now completely and utterly irrelevant. The internal structure, the things that the ODS toolbox gives you, are all this stuff on the left-hand side. There's a graphics engine, which was written by Orthogon, the company I was referring to. This talks to objects in an in-memory object store. They say it's object-oriented. In fact, really the only thing you can do is alter attribute values of an object. It's not object-oriented in the sense that there are, sort of method inheritance or anything like that. They then, as I learned, it also comes with its own proprietary scripting language. I learned later that actually this was a language they bought off the Fraunhofer Institute and smashed them together in some sort of ghastly road accident, because the scripting language has its own sort of object model. And as I said, the object store and the graphics and the dialog manager have their own object model, and they're not the same, really. It dawns on you after a while that you're writing programs for 2 different things simultaneously. So the application itself is about 50-50 C, C++ code and script language. Now, I have an apology to make at this point, because I'm going to show you a few code samples, and absolutely none of them are in Python, for which I apologize. Just to give you a flavour of it, this is what the script language looks like. The bit I'm showing you now is really actually quite nice. You look at that and you think, right, this is fairly tractable, probably. I can understand this. It's only when you get closer to it and you discover that it doesn't have modern advanced data types like arrays. And my single favourite feature, it has a very simple to use C calling interface. So you can call C routines from the script language. What you do is you build, before you run the script language from a C main. And in that C main, you build a table of functions you're going to want to call. And in your script module, you declare an external function. And my single favorite feature about this wonderful product is what happens if you declare a C function but forget to include the linkage in the C. What happens is that it runs your script, and when it comes to that line, it silently skips it. And you then spend half an afternoon trying to work out why the hell that variable never got set. Anyway, there you go. So, there were some solid engineering reasons for wanting to move away from the ODS toolbox. It's seriously out of date. All the dialog stuff is all done with Motif. Now, who remembers Motif? Who wants to remember Motif? All that to go down instantly. It's runtime licensed. Now, believe it, if you're running stuff that is safety related and should just carry on working whatever. The last thing I want in there is a runtime license manager whose only job, if it is functioning correctly, is to stop your program working. This did actually happen once when we did an upgrade. It wasn't the ODS license manager, but another license manager went loopy and switched off all the ATC systems in the main Prague centre. Luckily, because it was an upgrade, this happened at 3 o'clock in the morning when there was nothing terribly important happening. We were able to roll it all backwards. Anyway, ODS is strictly in maintenance mode now. There is no reason anybody sane would ever want to use it again for anything they're starting with. It's closed source. It doesn't provide any functionality not obtainable with much more modern, much nicer toolkits. And believe it or not, the supplier has an upgrade path which is based on Java and is not backwards compatible, which, to my mind, does not give you a lot of reasons. But there are also business reasons for wanting to move away from the ODS toolbox. First of all, it's expensive. The Czechs bought a site license for ODS Toolbox back in about 2005, at which time they paid a cool €1 million for it. Developer licenses were, I think, something like €10,000 per annum or something. It was... There is no skill resource base worth mentioning. Nobody knows it. I'm sure nobody else in this room knows it, and believe me, you can all be completely grateful for that. As I said, it's closed source, single supplier, and since it's pretty much their only major product, I have serious concerns about what's going to happen in the future. We were just coming up to a point where a refresh of applications was happening, and their associated hardware, and from that point onwards, you're looking at a program that's going to run and need to be updated for at least a decade, possibly more. Now, I don't like the idea of betting the business on a small company in North Germany still being in business and still wanting to support a piece of software in 10 years' time, particularly when their only viable business model is to milk their existing customers for everything they can get. However, so the obvious thing is, let's rewrite it. Unfortunately, there are problems with that as well, because that would be a completely new product from a contractual point of view. It would be a large risk for the customer because, apart from anything else, they're going to have to formally retrain all the controllers, they're going to have to make a new safety case, and do the ton of bureaucracy in which air traffic control so revels. And it's a bigger risk for the company because one of the other things is air traffic control in the Czech Republic is a public body. It's a new product. It's acquisition of a new product, therefore they would have to go out to tender, and there's a chance you might not win the bloody tender. So, anyway, and at that point we got stuck for quite some time until the situation really became quite troubling, if I can put it that way. Because your application starts looking older and older and older. And although functionality is theoretically what matters, people buy stuff with their eyes. And it's difficult to convince somebody they should buy something that looks old-fashioned, particularly if you want to charge a lot of money for it. Now, luckily, interestingly, in IDP and commonly in ODS applications, the main display is a window, but actually all the dialogues are separate top-level windows. They're not dialog children of the main one. And I just started thinking, well, would it be possible to have windows that would be run by a different graphics toolbox, but as part of the same application? So you could sort of sneak a rewrite in stages. The idea behind this is very much the grandfather's axe. Can you replace the head of the axe and sometime later replace the handle of the axe while still maintaining that for all practical and legal purposes, it is the same axe. So here was the idea. Now, first of all, of course, we've got a lot of code in a scripting language. Does anybody in this room know a nice scripting language? Yeah! We need a graphics toolbox as well, which works well with a scripting language. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look around at graphics toolboxes, the general purpose graphics toolboxes these days, there is Qt and nothing much else. And Python, bless it, has two sets. Well, has very good bindings for Qt. So here's the idea. Can we first of all sneak in Python and Qt, interface Python to the object store and indeed to the script engine, so that the script can call Python and Python can call out to the scripts and so forth. Have Python and Qt producing dialogues on the screen. So I did a bit of a... and then the idea is that over time you can then start replacing, once you've replaced all the top level windows and the main screen, then you can just take away, take stuff away until you arrive at this magic day when you don't even use the IBM object store anymore. And hooray, suddenly, magically, you're ODS free. So first thing, we've got to interface with the existing dialogues. Okay. So we've got to mingle event loops. Now Qt, back in days of Qt 3, as part of the enterprise edition, they had something called the Qt Motif extension, which did exactly that for motif-based applications. Wait, hey. It was ported to Qt 4, but they never sold it commercially, I think. But bless them, they open sourced it. So you can still find it in there. It's discontinued from Qt proper now, but it's still lurking there if you happen to be using Qt 4. So I tried a little experiment. That's the experiment. This is the main IDP window. That is a motif dialog from the ODS toolbox. And these two are Qt dialogues. This one is just a test dialog with a few controls on, and this one is replacing the existing message dialog with a Qt. There were a few issues with it, but broadly speaking, I got it working well enough. So we had to do these tasks, basically. Python interface to the object store, interface to the script language IDM, and vice versa. Then translate the IDM modules, the script modules, to Python, and combine the ODS and Qt event loops, and then we were underway. Now, this is the next bit. These are the next little bits of code I'm going to show you. As I said, you're not going to do this, so feel free to sleep or whatever. This is loading up the ODS toolbox, okay, where you, what you're doing here is loading the initial dialog and running it. This is retrieving the X display information from ODS toolbox and passing it into the Qt, creating a Qt motif context and passing all that in. This is feeding the arguments, or whatever we've got off them, well, setting up a few Python, because we're linking CPython in here, creating a few Python modules, feeding the arguments into the Python runtime, doing PyInitialize, and then finally in the event loop. Now in the event loop, I struggled a bit because the ODS toolbox hooks into the event loop were not terribly useful. In the end, what I ended up doing was running the motif event loop, and then when it had, when it exited, so I'm asking you to please wait for some events and then process all the events you get and then exit. Okay, when it's exited, I'll dive into the ODS event loop. Horrible, and you have to be really careful with your GIL handling in the Python in the C-Python transition. But we did kind of basically get it working well enough. And then I stopped working on it, handed it over to one of a team of 4 in Prague, a guy called Martin Ottmar. And Martin really got the bit between his teeth and first of all started theming Qt. This is based on the Qt Motif theme, but making it look as much as possible like IBM. And boy did he succeed, to a rather worrying level. And even better than that, I looked at whether it was going to be possible to parse IBM script and do some automatic translation. I was somewhat handicapped in that by not having a grammar of IBM, and in the end I just thought, no, I think a parser is not going to work. Martin went the route of doing basically heuristic regex matching, and got it basically close enough that you could then hand edit the rest. Okay, it's not pretty, but it worked.
And your grandfather likes his axe.
Yeah, this is IDP PyQt. And as you can see, actually, it looks a lot, well, you may not be able to see it particularly, but believe me, when you look at it face to face, it looks a lot nicer, because all of a sudden, you have sophisticated stuff like anti-alias fonts in there, which you can't do in ODS Toolbox, because it uses a version of Motif that doesn't have it, yada, yada, yada. So, the project is still in progress. All the graphics are in Qt. And when I first wrote this talk, they still had the object storing. They still hadn't removed all the old ODS Toolbox. But I got pinged on Jabber about 3 weeks ago to say that they'd done it and they'd removed the last of the ODS Toolbox in there. Now, none of the intermediate stages of this application ever got deployed, but at this stage I think everyone is cautiously optimistic the project goal will be achieved. The customer is engaged in the sense that the customer has watched all this happening and knows it's still the same act and feels they are still dealing with the same thing. Okay.
So it's just the maintenance release?
So at some point, yeah, they'll sort of, I'm not quite sure how they'll do it, but the idea is it will just be a maintenance release at some stage. It'll be a major maintenance release, sure, but it'll still be a maintenance release. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Now, as I said, this is a confession, so basically, if you'd said to me, this is what we want to do, let's do it the sensible way, this is not it. This is why I'm saying, don't for God's sakes do this. Apart from anything else, it requires rather more development work than just doing a rewrite from scratch. And you really can't avoid bringing over technical legacy from the old one. Just the way the existing application works ends up inflicting itself on the way the new application works. But actually the message here is that the development cost and risk is only part of a project's total cost and risk. And in this particular case, the business problems were bigger than the technical problems. And to some extent, the technical solution had to play second fiddle to the business solution. So don't do this, okay? Anyway, as I said, I no longer work there. And to be fair, these are the gentlemen who are actually responsible for most of the work on this. Russell's met quite a few of them. He hasn't met Radek, which is a pity because you like Radek and he's bloody good. That's Martin, who did nearly all the clever stuff in there. But they were a wonderful lot to work with, and I must admit I miss them. And that's all. So thank you for your attention. Shall we sing the Philosopher's Song? No. Okay. And I'll tell you a tiny bit more about what I'm doing now in the lightning talks.
Okay.
Thank you very much.